Welcome everybody to our fall newsletter series for MFCA. We are going to be interviewing the one and only Dr. Ian Williamson and get kind of more of an in-depth, deeper approach or experience of what he's gone through in kind of starting and founding MFCA. So Dr. Ian Williamson was appointed Dean of the UCI Paul Merage School of Business at UC Irvine just earlier this year in January. And prior to this role, he served as the Pro Vice Chancellor and Dean of Commerce at the Wellington School of Business and Government at Victoria University of Wellington. He also received his PhD from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Whoop, whoop, go Heels.
Yes.
And aside from just being a leading global expert in the area of human resource management, he is a very passionate educator and inspiration, really, to many of us. Though he's won innumerable research and teaching awards, you can probably go count them all on his CV. A recent well-deserved award he has won that is near and dear to all of our hearts is his induction to the PhD Project Hall of Fame in 2019, which was so well-deserved given his decades of commitment to PhD Project and, of course, MFCA, which we would not all be here if it were not for him. So he founded the MFCA in 2001. And we're going to start off by hearing from him kind of what that experience was like, what maybe prompted him to do so, what are maybe some obstacles he may have faced along the way. And then we'll take it from there and ask some more questions throughout. So Dr. Ian Williamson, you can go ahead and kick us off and just kind of tell us about MFCA and how that all started for you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really, it's a pleasure to be able to join you today. Thank you very much for inviting me. So MFCA, it's interesting because everything always starts small, and it's not necessarily this big a thing. And sometimes organizations are created because there's like this overt thing you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes they're created because there's something you feel and you have a connection to, and you don't want it to disappear. And I think for me, it was more the latter. It wasn't like this big goal as much as I'd had this experience in the PhD project, and it just was very impactful for me. And then I got a sense, maybe there was a trigger point which made me really understand like how important that was. And I guess I'll go back in August of 2000, we were at the Management Doctoral Student Association conference from the PhD project. It was in Toronto that year. I was the past president of the MDSA, having previously served the year before as president. And that was a great year for me because I was graduating from Carolina. And I had, my entire time when I was in my doctoral program, the one thing that I was looking forward to was my capping ceremony at the MDSA conference. And my wife had actually come to Toronto to be a part of that ceremony. So it was going to be a really big deal. And prior to the capping, Dr. Pat Hewlin, who's now at McGill, she had taken over as the president that year. She's a delightful woman, and she came to introduce the keynote speaker. And as she was introducing the keynote speaker, Pat fainted and fell on the stage, passed out. And so, you can imagine there's hundreds of people in this room. We see this all happen in real time. And everybody's just like, what in the world? And so people just rush to the stage to, assist her. And she's a good friend of mine, and I knew her husband, and so others knew their friend. So we're rushing, and they're calling her family, and instantaneously, without any coordination, like the whole room just kind of stood up and started praying. And it was just like this amazing thing. We got these hundreds of people, most of whom don't know her.
Yeah.
And of course, at that dinner, you have a lot of people who are not affiliated with the PhD project as well. And, people get her out, the ambulance comes, they take her, and she comes to, and they get her in an ambulance. A few people ride with her to the ambulance. We catch up with her husband, tell him what's going on. And, it just was this surreal event to kind of see how everybody immediately showed like this same value structure around support and empathy. And the event did continue. We ended up, doing all the ceremony. I got capped, but years later, I would meet people, particularly people who weren't affiliated with the PhD project, and they would reflect how like they had never seen anything like that before in any type of professional event. That sense of like sincere concern, empathy, care, like just immediately without any prompting. that night ultimately was the start of the MSCA. That was it, because the next day, I went out to dinner with a few people who were at that event, and we were just reflecting on how powerful that was and how spontaneous and how supportive it was. And I just kind of noted, like, man, we need that. We have to keep. We can never lose that. Like, that's really important. And I was sitting next to Linda Johnson, who's a professor now at the Naval War College, and I told her, I said, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm not going to be in this next year. And I said, we will have an organization for faculty built on that culture. Like, that's going to happen. And as I was talking to her, I just started taking notes literally on a napkin. This wasn't, we didn't have the phones and all this other stuff. It was just me writing on the napkin about all the things that were so critical about that culture and how we had to have an organization to do that. So, fast forward, I started my job at University of Maryland like a few weeks later. So I'm a brand new assistant professor. I have no idea what's going on. But this idea, was really entrenched in me. And I was just committed. I was not going to let that go. So in November, after 2 months of being on the job, or 3 months or whatever, I pulled together an email, which basically was every Black, Hispanic, Native American faculty member I knew, right? So basically all the people I came in contact with the PhD project. And I sent them out a message saying I wanted to create an organization about serving our community of scholars. And that after talking to people, there were really three things that people talked about: that there was a lack of a formal structure that was specifically designed towards our sense of community, right? So there was the academy and there were other things, but this wasn't designed with us in mind. And like, we wanted something that really was built around our values, our focus, our orientation. And so there was this need to have that, and there was this unmet need in the market. Like, the other organizations were important, but they weren't really designed for that. And then finally, that while professional development was critical, but it was also more than that, right? It was more than just a tactical organization to help us succeed professionally. That there was something about doing this in a way that actually uplifted us personally and reaffirmed us, and, just allowed a platform for us to do the things that were important for us in our community. So I sent this message out asking people, would they be interested in having a meeting in Academy of Management in the following year, 2001. And, I just got tremendous response. Everybody's like, great idea, no problem, tell me what you need. And, I was like, okay, I'm gonna run with it. Now, of course, again, I'm like my first semester as an assistant professor. So this is not necessarily something I'm bringing up to my senior professors, right? I'm working on this thing, but I didn't care. I was like, this is gonna happen. So I reached out to the PhD project and I said, can you reserve a room for us at the Academy? Of course they did. And, I thought, well, we're going to have this forum. We need a topic. So I reached out to David Thomas, who's now the president of Morehouse. At that time, he was a professor at Harvard. And I had met him through the PhD project, but I, literally did not know him very well. But I just reached out to him and said, listen, we're trying to do this thing. You do all this work on mentoring and development, particularly of minority professionals. Would you be willing to do a session for us on mentoring, networking, and career development? He was like, no problem, done. He was like, I don't even know my schedule at the Academy yet, but I will definitely do it, whatever it is. And, so then I said, well, we can't, this is us. We can't have a session without food. So, so that's not going to last. That organization won't last very long. So, but I don't have any money, right? So I'm talking to some other people, and there was another woman, Tiffany Galvin, who's now at Vanderbilt. And she was an assistant professor at Utah. And she said, you know what? I think my dean at the University of Utah might be willing to put some money up. So I was like, fine, I reach out to him. And sure enough, he put some money up. And then David Ford, who was a professor at that time, he was a professor emeritus at the University of Texas, Dallas. He was like, I will find a way to get my organization to put up some money. So now we have food, right? And, it was interesting because, going back, you got to remember, we didn't have Facebook, LinkedIn, none of that stuff at that time. And one of the things that we appreciated was, we didn't have a way of communicating or sharing or expressing. It wasn't easy to do. People didn't know where people were. So I had this other idea of saying, well, why don't we pull together a directory? So at least we can always connect with each other and it be something that we can draw upon. So I got my university, Maryland, to pull together some money for me to hire a student, and one of our doctoral students, who later on became one of the presidents of the NDSA, to create a directory of all of our faculty, right, that we can share and have. So I work on this over the course of the year, and I have tons of support, and I can go through tons of names: Cornetta Robertson and Lakita Block. I mean, everybody just was completely in. And so we get to August the following year at the Academy. It's in Washington D.C. that year, and it's the moment of truth, right? So organize this thing. It's in the Academy, brochure, and people show up, and about 60, 70 people show up to the first event. David Thomas was David Thomas, which means he was amazing. And the reception and the food was great. And, I remember at one of the sessions standing in front of the group that we call it, when we organized this and called together and introducing what we were trying to do. And I said, look around this room. There is no room in the academy that has more talent than the people in this room right now. And the question that we need to think about is, it's not what or will we be able to do it. The only question we need to figure out is, what would we like to accomplish as a group? And, that was it. And, reflecting upon that, the thing that really made this work was it tapped into who we are, the culture. We have just, over the last 25 years, in large part through the PhD project, but just also the nature of the people that have come through, we've developed this group where it's about collective success and individual excellence. And that those two things are not in conflict. And that's something that you just do not see in the broader academy. That we can individually be excellent, and that in no way, shape, or form will ever detract from our collective success. And that there is no greater joy than just celebrating the success of somebody next to you. And I've said this on many occasions. I actually think we've come up with a way to develop scholars that is better than any other system on the planet. Like, we should just design our own doctoral program and do it that way, because it's better than any other doctoral program structure that we have in any institution I've ever seen. And so that was it. And, from there, I said, we need our own conference to separate from the academy. We cannot always be in the shadow of academy. Everybody's like, oh, we can't do that. 2 years later, we have our own conference. I hosted it at Maryland. That's been going on for years now. It's been international on multiple occasions. Again, there is no room that has more talent and resources than the room of an MFCA gathering. And that's just something that has always stood with me. And so it's been amazing. But it started with a simple thing. We can't lose this moment. And I think it's important to appreciate it's about what we do, but it's about how we do it. And one of the things that's really been great about all of this is that you can be successful being who you are. You don't, a lot of the times when we go to these other things, it's about learning how to create a code to manage in some other environment, right? And that's okay, fine, but that's not ultimately going to be sustainable. And there's no need for it, right? So I can sit down at an MFCA reception and play bid whist for 2 hours and talk about research and get a co-author and win an award for the paper that came out of the bid whist hand. Like this, that's who I am.
Yeah.
So why would I'm only going to be excellent in those spaces and those times when I'm actually being genuine in who I am. And those other times, when I'm having to adapt, I'm not bringing whole self to, to that situation. So I think we've always been really good at that, and also appreciating that a lot of these barriers or silos or distinctions, teaching school, research school, and all this other things that the academy has created, we're kind of separate and above those types of distinctions, right? Be able to see the excellence in all the things that people are doing and be inspired by what they're doing. So we've been able to hold on to that, and I'm really proud of that. That's in, and even like this last year, looking what everyone was able to do virtually with the MSCA and the commitment that people had, it was touching to me, because it means that we've done a good job over the years of keeping that moment and people understanding why it's so important, and more importantly, people getting value out of it, right? So it's not like this sense of obligation as much as it's just, of course, this is something that's helping.
You mentioned things like being obviously very cooperative and excellence, building this culture of support, uplifting, allowing us to kind of be who we are and do things that are important to us. If you had to maybe think about 3 to 5 key values that being an MFCA member has, what would you say those are, given your experience?
Well, I think it's one of excellence. This is a space where anybody can really, I would want, and I'm going to give you the ideal. And in doing this, what I'm really doing is also telling you what it's done for me. There's never been a moment in my conversations at an MFCA activity or with members, whether it be large group or small group, where I felt inhibited to, I felt that I would be inhibited. Like I could express the most profound, exciting, biggest idea, and people would be like, so how are we going to get that done?
How
It
we
was
gonna
never
leave?
like, oh, what are you talking about? Don't waste your time, or we got to get tenure first. You got to get promoted first. It was like, so how are you gonna get? How are we going to get that done?
Yeah.
Right. And so that notion of just like ambition and excellence, and it being normalized, like it's oh yeah, dream big. Don't stop. Don't let it. So and then that notion of how are we going to get that done? Right. And so this notion of people feeling an obligation or a sense of commitment to say, yeah, I will support you because I have an expectation of reciprocity. You will support me. And there's never been a moment when I've reached out to someone and they haven't sort of taken the time to talk to me, provide me with a connection. They just and there's a built-in culture of reciprocity,
Mhm.
right? And that's always in part of what we're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
And so the other thing around this is it is about scholarship.
Mhm.
So embracing the fact that we are scholars, and that intellectual, you know, debate and sort of sitting like the types of conversations that really drove my thinking around particular elements. And it's because that scholarship is not just about what's coming out of, say, the journals, but it's also a way for people to bring in their lived experiences in a very what's the best structured way,
Mhm.
right? And so to have a group of scholars who have a lived experience that are comfortable with the literature and can kind of weave that in is a very unique. Oftentimes, I think you find in conversations in the academy, they're very detached, very abstract. And what I found is that there's a way in which we can bring in the lived experiences as well as be highly scholarly, very academic, and it's very seamless. And I think it generates some really great outcomes. And I think the other thing about it is innovation. We have just tried always to do things. And because there's that culture of ambition and excellence and support, it's never been a problem. And I think finally holistic. So this has never been, like one of the things that's interesting is you have like conferences that are the research conferences and conferences that are the teaching conferences, and it's like we all, I think, have a passion in some way, shape, or form for all aspects of what we're doing, not just the teaching or the research, but the notion of community engagement and that notion of a broader impact. So there's a holistic aspect to it, which is fine, it's celebrated. And I've never felt like I needed to sort of only focus on a particular domain in an MFC. I could talk about all those things, and there would be excitement around, okay, what can we do to get that done?
Mhm. Which ties into, one key thing you also mentioned before, which is about, being authentic. We can be
Yes.
authentic and be, our whole selves as opposed to adapting in other situations.
In every phase of my professional life for the last 20 years has been touched by someone affiliated with this. And as I've gone through the ups and downs and all the various challenges and the frustrations personally, um, you know, you know, there's always been somebody from MFCA there.
Mhm.
And so it's truly become one of the most enjoyable aspects of that decision to get the PhD. Like, yes, I've had this interesting career, and yes, I've had this chance to do work that I find exciting, but maybe more importantly, I've been able to form this connection with all these people who, I just count on. And so it's been great for me. To have those spaces where the personal life and the professional life overlap and it's very comfortable. And, I've been able to publish with my friends around issues that we talked about at MSCA conferences over, like, it's so fulfilling. And so that's been great. I would hope that others would be able to have an experience like that in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. Keys to success right there. Publishing with your
Yeah,
friends.
it is. It is. And
So you started in 2021 January here at UC Irvine. Um, I'm sure a lot has, well, a lot has happened in the last year in your transition. Um, what are, some things that you were looking forward to? What are some challenges maybe you faced since starting? What has been pretty particularly rewarding for you in this new role?
Yeah,
Tell
I
us about
started January 1st, 2021 remotely. So I was living in New Zealand. I had not moved yet and could not get to the US because of COVID. And fortunately, California Irvine understood that. And so I just started as a remote dean. And so it was interesting. I put myself on California time. I was working Tuesday to Saturday because, we're 19 hours ahead. So it was a whole nother story. And that was certainly I don't know if it was just challenging as much as it just was like, okay, that didn't have the playbook for that one. And then I got a chance finally to move to the United States in July. So, obviously COVID and making sure everybody is safe and we have some sense of comfort around that was the number one priority. But we will continue to run a business school. We will continue to educate individuals. We'll do this in a way that is allowed. And so I think I'm looking forward to, we're going through a strategy review process right now. And I actually think we have a great opportunity to really change the whole dialogue around how particularly underrepresented groups are engaging with technology. And so that's going to be a big thrust for our business. Our business school has a huge emphasis around technology and business. And one of the things I've been talking to people around is, we can't prepare these great students to go out into an environment that will not tolerate them. And so things like the fact that in California, 3% of all the venture capital money goes to Latinx and Black ventures in technology. 3%, like that's, you have to be planning. You have to systematically try to do something like to make it such a small number, given the representation of those communities in this state. The low representation of individuals on technology businesses directed by board of directors or the workforce. And so I'm really looking forward to how can we as a business school play a role, not just in training excellent students to be successful in their careers with skill sets, but really changing the broader ecosystem of how individuals from these communities and the communities at large are able to engage with technology. And so that's a big goal. It's a big, aspiration. But I actually think we're well positioned to have if not change the world around that, certainly give some examples and to motivate people to look very differently at it. So that'll be one of the major things I'm going to be focusing on, and hopefully rallying our school around and getting some attention to and develop some nice innovations around.
So what is something just in general that you're most looking forward to this upcoming year, either in your role or really anything?
Well, I mean, one of the things that was exciting for me to take this role at a personal level, just for my own personal growth, it was a chance to move and be involved in a very different community and things that I'm excited about that I haven't really had a chance to do before. So this is the first time I've lived in a community which had a very large Latinx population. Mm-hmm. And so this is a great opportunity for me to be much more engaged and, really learn and be around that community, see how we as a business school can support that community in terms of its business activities. And that's exciting for me because I tend to like to want to find and explore and I'll learn. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And the other aspect around it is this is, where I am is as a hub of technology and probably the most technology sophisticated set of companies I've ever been around. And so this will be really exciting for me to sort of be involved in those spaces, life sciences or data analytics. And again, from a professional development perspective, that's going to be, I'm sure that will change and shape the way I think about things and add on to my repertoire as a business professor. So I'm very excited about that. So I'll take a lot of personal joy out of that. And then at a more administration perspective, we're in crisis mode right now. Our whole industry is in crisis mode, not just because of COVID. We're changing. We're doing this interview virtually, and it's going to be shown virtually, and all the various things that we would have never even thought about. And I am always excited as a leader to be in those spaces where you get a chance to innovate. And so this is a unique opportunity to really redefine, I think, or change the pathway of this institution and actually be a part of the disruption that is higher education.
So last question, always a fun one. What is your top 5 music playlist?
So I'm a pretty straightforward when it comes to this one. So anything by Prince. Doesn't even matter. Anything by Prince. I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna listen to that. That's definitely gonna be on there. When it comes to hip hop, anything by Tribe Called Quest, I'm not going to even, whatever, just put it on and I'll be fine with it. A few hours later, we can play change. Anything, I'm a huge KRS-One fan, like Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, that's a little old school, but anything by him, that's my favorite hip hop artist of all time. And I'm pleased to see, I've seen him twice in concert and I would do it a third time in a heartbeat. So, I think my parents raised me right. So anything by James Brown is definitely gonna be fine. And then I'm from Chicago, right? So I'm a Southside Chicago kid. So, we grew up on house music.
Mhm.
So, you know, anything by Lil Lewis from back in the day is going to be fine by me. So, you know, but pretty much, you know, any Southside Chicago house music is going to be, that's going to be fine. I trended old school. I actually do listen to new stuff as well, but, you know, I went with the standards that I'm always going to be happy with.
Your go-tos, you know, you got to go
Yeah,
with
yeah,
your go-tos. It's
yeah.
always the best choice. Again, I very much appreciate you taking the time to do this. And just so everybody knows, I literally emailed him, I don't know, one morning, and I think I heard a response within like 30 minutes. Like unheard of from a dude.
Anything,
I just
anything. What
so willing.
reciprocity, man?
I know,
Reciprocity. It doesn't
just so
stop.
willing.
You know, once
But yeah,
you're in, you're in.
very much appreciate your time and your insight and just all you have done, and I'm sure we'll continue to do for the PhD project, but also MFCA. Just blessed to have you in our corner, really.
No, it's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure. And thank you for just continuing what we're trying to do. And it's been great ride so far. I'm looking forward to more.